Hello, and welcome to the fifth grade 4-6 weeks preview. I'm Sonia Burrow, the writing specialist here in HEB, and I will be walking you through your writing curriculum covering writing and grammar for the 4-6 weeks. To begin, we'll be looking at patterns of power and what teach you'll be covering during grammar, your poetry unit that you'll be finishing up, literary essay, which is your new unit that you'll be covering, drama, which is a very short 3-day event that you'll be working on in writing, and then some supports. Looking first at patterns of power in grammar, starting at the bottom, we can see the progression of your grammar over the course of the 6 weeks. The first one will be 5.11 DIX, capitalization of abbreviations, initials, acronyms, and organizations. So think about some of the places within other content area that you may notice those with your students or comment on them to make sure that they're really understanding all the different opportunities to use capitalization correctly in those. 5.11 DI, complete sentence, complete simple and compound sentences with subject-verb agreement and avoidance of splices, run-ons, and fragments. So really understanding all of the components of a complete sentence, both simple and compound, and then what we're trying to avoid during writing. So if you're seeing some of those other pieces in students' writing, this would be a good opportunity to have that teachable moment with students. And it may not be the whole class that needs a lesson on splices or run-ons or fragments. Maybe you just have a few kids that you need to conference with over that. 5.11 DX, punctuation marks, including commas in compound and complex sentences, quotation marks in dialogue, and italics and underlining for titles and emphasis. So this is an interesting TEK. There's a lot covered in this one as well. And notice that they do talk about complex sentences. So those are our WUPA sentences, and then you have quotation marks in dialogue, and how we're going to use that and all of those pieces. So you, again, in their writing, may notice times where these pieces will come in handy, especially when you get into the literary essay part of your writing, because you may need them to be underlining titles. You may need them to be putting quotes in. So you have some different pieces that will lend itself really well in the writing to this grammar TEK. 5.11 DVII are pronouns including indefinite. 5.11 DII, past tense of irregular verbs. So those are the grammar TEKs that you're going to be covering. Remember to look in your Patterns of Power book. I know there should be one per grade level. If you get stuck on something, a lot of times in the grammar PowerPoint, you also see at the bottom there are notes. So if you need any notes on that, they're down at the bottom to help support your understanding or some other activities that might need to be taught to help students. So just remember that we're doing these 4 things during the course of our Patterns of Power time. So on day 1, you have your notice day. When you're making your lesson plans, make sure your questions help students move towards the focus phrase. Every sentence has lots of grammar pieces that could be talked about and covered, but we want to make sure that we might either ask kids questions or use statements like, I wonder why the author did blah, 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 things like that to help the kids move towards the focus phrase and pay attention to the nuances of the sentence that you're wanting them to notice. Then on compare day, remember that students are comparing the original sentence to a similar sentence. They can see the grammar rules applied to multiple sentences with similar patterns. We need them to see many examples of that grammar rule applied correctly. Okay, so we want to do that. Then on imitation, this is an opportunity to have them see again another sentence made by you. It's always helpful to make it in advance so that you know exactly how you want to formulate that. You can allow the kids to help you, of course, if you think that would be helpful, but I would have a pretty good structure. So create your imitation sentence ahead of time, focusing on ways to advance the student's thinking. So Think about the way your notice ends and comparisons are written. Can you up the skill level a little bit more when you write your imitation? What do you want to see them use that grammar skill for in their writing that's similar? We don't want to go totally off from it. Some examples might be in a sentence, it might say, I went to the store. Then the comparison says we went to the store. And I might say for younger students, I want them to see that we could have two people or a person go to the store. And so I'm going to use a name, or I'm going to use two names so that they can see that it's not only when the sentence starts this way. So we want to just kind of think about that as we make those imitation sentences. And then when the students go to create theirs, having them share those good sentences that they have made at their table, in a group, stand up, hold it up, read it out loud, share it on their video feed to their peers, gives them more opportunities to see good sentences, okay? And then edit and apply. This is where you're going to be looking at their writing and seeing, are we editing to make sure they're correct in that? And are we applying it in our own writing? Because we don't master something until we can do it consistently in our own writing. So we need to get them to that point. All right. How to use the writing curriculum. If you're coming to the open session that are put into the Google Classroom, they are always posted about 2 weeks before your new unit starts so that you have it. Then some of this may not apply as much, but if you are choosing to not go to open sessions, which is not required, of course, then these are some of the things you may want to make sure you're doing ahead of time. So step one, just read your mini lessons ahead of time and make sure you prepare materials. Remember, mini lessons are not about mastery, but showing students a method and letting them try it out. Don't stay on a single mini lesson for days, just keep moving. You're gonna have opportunities to revisit different skills. If you are working through open sessions with me, we look at the checklist and really analyze that versus an exemplar with your work. When you're doing it on your own, you can take that checklist, and as you're reading the lessons, look at the checklist. What skill is the lesson of the day covering, and mark it down on your checklist. That'll help you see, oh, I'm covering this 3 or 4 times during the course of this work. All right, 2, reading the lessons a week at a time. When I say that for units of study, they're longer. So what I would suggest you do is reading the teaching point for the week, each of those, so you kind of get an overview of what you're going to be covering with students during the week and how they work together. So if you're doing open sessions, you're going to automatically get to do some of that work with me and then continue it on your own. Or if you do it on your own and just do the arc of the bend, that gives you that overview. But if those things are not something you have time for right now, just making sure you read the teaching point for the week so that you have each of those. That'll give you a better sense of what's coming. 3, use your time wisely. You'll be spending time, oh, you're not doing letter writing, I apologize. You are doing poetry, you're doing literary essay, and you're doing drama. You have 28 days, and 24 of the instructional days are covered in the curriculum. So you have a few days to play with there for all the other things that come up and take time out of your day. And then our 4-6 weeks begins on January 19th. And then the last thing is you're going to be teaching specific strategies over the course of the year. As you teach them, make sure to hang charts up to help support students. Those are the silent teachers when you're not able to work with them. For digital students, we know that the resources are provided through the Heinemann website. You could just snip those anchor charts that you need and place them in Canvas for students on different ways, just to have a digital platform for the students to go and look at those anchor charts if they need them. So when you're working through each of them, please just make sure you're noticing the writing process. Where are you? What are you covering with the students? and talking to them. Today is a rehearsal day, or today we're going to do flash drafting, or we're going to be revising today. It does help the students kind of understand where they are in the writing process and know that the rehearsal, when you do active engagement, that is rehearsal. So that rehearsal in this graphic shows up in that one step, but really rehearsals happening every day. So the students may be, they may have flash draft and it's time to revise, but before they revise, you're going to have them rehearse that new way of revising. So that rehearsal happens often. All right, so poetry, you're going to go and work on poetry a little bit longer. I want you to think about this poetry unit as an extension from the beginning of the year. So really the poetry was written as a 20-day poetry unit broken up at the beginning of the year, and then you come back to it now. So you definitely have the right to remind students of all the things you've already covered in poetry. So poets choose topics that mean a lot to them is one of the skills you're going to be talking about. And poets use words, lines, sounds, and images to give poems rhythm, sound, and music to their poems. So, you know, we want to just help them along their path to understanding poetry. You will talk about lyrics and phrases, developing mood in the poems, figurative language, metaphors, similes, and stretching out comparisons. Now, all of these things, you know, are the backbone of understanding poems for reading. So if I can generate a poem and I understand the components I have to place within my poem to make that meaning, then they should be able to analyze a poem that they read from an author. So it is absolutely appropriate and essential that you are piggybacking on what you're doing in poetry and reading when you're working on this poetry and writing, so that you continue to have those conversations of read like a writer, write like a reader. I think that's how you say it. So just keep going back and forth between those two things and drawing comparisons and making sure the kids are seeing it in both settings. So it's a short unit, it's just 10 days, but it's just designed to help support what you've already done. So if you think, why are we doing this again? We really wanted to introduce it early because we know it's a hard skill in reading. So we wanted to give the kids that background knowledge in writing, but then we needed to come back to it so the kids get some more experience in it. All right, so before we look at the literary essay unit, I'm going to share a little bit of this video because this video kind of gives the basis for some of the writing that they're going to be doing. So when you're watching this, I know you're going to have to read what it says at the bottom because it's not in English, but also pay attention to some of the other features, like what are the boys wearing? Do they wear shoes? Where did they live? What's their background? So some of that stuff, because that all would play into writing about this because it's visual. Oops.
ถ้าพูดถึงทีมฟุตบอลของเราคงต้องย้อนกลับไปที่วันแรกที่นี่ชาวบ้านชอบดูฟุตบอลกันมากแต่ไม่มีใครเคยเล่นหรอกก็อย่างที่เห็นเรากินนอนอยู่บนน้ำมาแต่ไหนแต่ไรแล้วเพราะที่นี่ไม่มีถ้าพูดถึงทีมฟุตบอลของเราคงต้องย้อนกลับไปที่วันแรกที่นี่ชาวบ้านชอบดูฟุตบอลกันมากแต่ไม่มีใครเคยเล่นหรอกก็อย่างที่เห็นเรากินนอนอยู่บนน้ำมาแต่ไหนแต่ไรแล้วเพราะที่นี่ไม่มีฝนสักนิดกีฬาอย่างเดียวที่เล่นกันได้คือแข่งเรือไม่ก็โม้กันเรื่องปลาที่จับได้วันนั้นแหละความคิดเล็กๆก็เกิดขึ้น พวกเราคิดตั้งทีมฟุตบอลขึ้นมาแต่ชาวบ้านก็คิดว่าพวกเราบ้าเด็กพวกนี้ส่งเสียงอะไรกันปาเปิ้ลฮีหมดแล้วเราตั้งทีมบอลเราจะเป็นแชมป์โลกเด็กทะเลกันพี่กันทีมตบมืออย่างที่แกพูดพวกเราไม่มีแม้แต่ที่ให้เล่นฟุตบอลพอเราจัดทีมกันเสร็จปัญหาต่อมาก็คือเราจะเตะกันที่ไหนล่ะที่นี่มีแต่ทางเดินแคบๆแล้วเราก็มีความคิดว่าเราต้องสร้างพื้นที่ของเราเองเรารวบรวมเศษไม้เก่าๆถูกเข้ากับแพปลาทำอย่างนี้ทุกวันหลังเลิกเรียนแล้วเราก็สร้างสนามของเราขึ้นมาผมโยกเยกแต่มีวัตถุเต็มไปหมดบอลตกน้ำบ่อยมากเลยพวกเราด้วย แต่เราก็เรียนรู้ในการเล่นบนสนามแบบนี้ก็นี่แหละสนามของเราสนามนี้อาจจะเป็นแชมป์โลกแล้ววันหนึ่งเราก็ได้ไปสมัครการแข่งขันฟุตบอลไม่รู้ดิแล้วเราจะสู้กับเขาไหวเหรอแล้วเราก็ตัดสินใจลงแข่งถึงจะไม่มีชุดก็เหอะ
what these boys went through and became, in our terms, soccer players, but football players. So the kids will watch that, and then that's going to springboard into some writing for them. And so that's kind of your model piece. Literary essay for you guys. Let me pull up. Hello. Sorry. Okay, so the literary essay unit that you guys are going to move into did not come with the box, but Madonna is awesome and she bought it for everyone. And it is the unit that I believe will be the most impactful on your reading scores when we think about what we do in writing. Okay, so it looks like this. All right, and it's probably in your box, but if it's not, it's sitting next to it. And the literary essay unit is designed for students to write opinion papers based on their opinions of what they read. Okay, so we're writing about what we're reading. And so I want you to kind of consider that kids have to be stronger readers in order to do this work. So a lot of what you're going to do in this literary essay unit is reading text deeply and analyzing text, which sounds really good for reading, doesn't it? So they're going to spend more time really deep down digging into those texts and really understanding character development and why they made choices and all that. And then they're going to take those insights that they come up with to write papers on things that they've read. So the piece that you start with the students on is that video. And you use that as your model. And then the kids go from there into writing your literary essays over things. Now, outside the fact that it's going to help them on their STAR test, which is, we know that that's important. Literary essay is the type of writing that these students will do from 5th grade on all the way through college. This is the type of writing that they have to do most of the time. Now, they have to write science reports and things like that, but almost all the reports, all the writing that my daughter and my son had to do was based off of reading something and writing about it, writing an opinion about it. That's the literary essay. So we're setting the foundation for kids when we do this work, building them up to understanding the nuances and what they need to do, being better readers, thinking for themselves and writing well. It's one of my favorite units. I had asked LaDonna to get it for you guys, and I was like, please. Like, they bought me a copy so I could read it. I was like, this is the best. This is so important for our kids. Having kids in junior high and high school and going through HEB and seeing what they have to do. I can tell you this will make a big impact, not only for your fifth graders, but for those fifth graders all the way through. We want them to be able to analyze and think about these things. So please know that this is a hugely important unit. It's not easy. However, when we think about what the kids had to do in fourth grade, so they had to do opinion writing, but it was like, what's your favorite season? What's your favorite holiday, right? When they do the opinion writing for this, they're writing opinions about characters and books and events in a book. And the nice thing is that when it's time to pull evidence, they can use their own life as one example, but most of their evidence is coming from the text. So in some respects, it's going to be easier for your kids because they don't have to think of the answer. They just have to find the answer. So they have to go back and deep read, which we love, and go in there and go, that supports my belief. That piece of evidence right there, or this one does. And then they can even cross it with, this piece of evidence reminds me of time in my own life when this happened, and that's why I believe that this is important. So we're helping them become more richer, deeper thinkers through this unit, okay? So they need to watch the video. I didn't have you watch the whole thing, but go ahead and watch the video with your students, maybe watch it ahead of time while you clean in your room up or something at the end of the day. And you're going to use that as your piece to start, okay? I don't know why it keeps flipping through that. All right, so look at some of the skills that your kids are going to be learning. Think analytically about a text, crafting claims, supporting claims with evidence. So that's evidence that they're getting from the text. They're going to learn, one of the objectives, students will learn to close read in order to develop these statements and identify evidence. Students will learn how to support their claims with evidence from their text. Students will learn to read, reread, and rethink a text. Solid organizational structures. This unit strengthens reading skills, and students will learn to learn interpretation about the text and shared digital texts, okay? And then our last bit is on drama. So I'm going to pull this up one more time so that I can. Okay, so before we look at this, so the drama unit, it's not a long one, it's just a couple days, and it is not about the kids really writing. So I want you to understand that these 3 days, students really are not writing dramas, because when I think of asking someone to write a drama, that is a lot of time, and we don't really have the time for them to write dramas. However, the kids have written narratives, and a drama is a narrative on stage. So since they have all this experience with writing narratives, what you're going to be doing with the kids is you're going to be talking about, this is the checklist for a narrative. These are all the things a narrative would have, but now we're putting it in this other setting, and the kids are going to be looking at that checklist and saying, like, how would you, in a narrative, when I'm writing one, I talk about emotions. I want that internal dialogue happening on the page that Sally thought to herself, blah, blah, blah. All those things I want in a narrative. Where would you find that same piece, because it's so important, in the drama? So they're going to be identifying the pieces that they put in their own writing in a narrative. Where would you find it in the drama? So setting is important. When you're writing a story, you need to tell us where it's happening, what's going on, all that. Where do you find that same thing in the drama? It's still there. It's just located in a different way. And then the kids can start seeing, oh, if I need to know the setting of a drama, I'm going to look in this box because it's going to tell me in stage directions or something, it's going to tell me. If I want to know the mood of my characters, it's going to tell me right over here how the character said it, not what they said. And so it's going to help the kids understand what stage directions do, what all these pieces do in the drama that would have been in a narrative written a little bit differently. So it's only a few days, but it's designed really to help them compare and analyze those two pieces together. So it keeps wanting to go the wrong way. Okay, so here's what we're going to be covering. Students will evaluate dramas to find narrative craft moves. Use their knowledge of narrative writing. Students will look at how dramas are created. I don't know why there's some apostrophe in there. Playwrights use narrative skills to create plays and dramas, and playwrights show action in unique ways. So those are the things that you're going to be covering in there. All right. This is the big moment. This is what you guys have probably been waiting for, and I apologize it took so long. So your code word for the preview is parrot. Okay, so that is your code word for the preview. So just make sure you write that down. And when you go in to fill out that form, you put that in for writing. Okay, making it all work together. Remember, we have patterns of power. In your 10-minute grammar lessons, you're exposing students to a focus phrase and examples of good writing and reinforcing the skills the students need to know. And then you have your mini lessons where you're providing the students with a tip, strategy, or tool that they use during independent writing. Then during independent writing, they're practicing the new writing skill and gain support from you as you conference with writers. When you conference with writers, you're looking for patterns that show that the students are able to transfer what you're teaching to their own writing. And then when you evaluate their writing through their conferencing, you're able to determine if students are able to apply the new skill in both patterns of power and mini lessons to their writing. And you can then use that data to determine your next steps. So that's how they all kind of work together, guys, to give the whole flow of what you're doing. Just remember, there's an analogy that says, it's like riding a bike. Once you've learned how to do it, you can always do it. But I would say for writing, there's a different analogy. It's like playing a sport. You have to keep practicing to get better at it. And if you stop practicing, you have to relearn skills. So you may know that you have to throw the ball, but if you haven't done it in 10 years, it's going to take a while to get that muscle memory back. And so if you keep practicing all along the way, that's how you're going to get better. So we want to just make sure that those kids are getting independent practice writing every day and as much as they can, because if they aren't using it, they lose it. So the more they can do that and the more they can love to write, the better we'll do at it. If writing is a chore, if it's another task, it's hard to get them to do it. But if they love to do it, if you can make it exciting, make sure you're doing those celebrations, giving them an opportunity to share their writing, explore writing in different ways, and make your classroom a safe environment for students so that they can take risks and you can acknowledge that they tried something that they've never done before that might have been a little unnerving for them, but you applaud them for trying it and then give them their teaching tip or your support on, one way you can make this even better. It does make a huge difference. We don't want kids to live in fear of the pencil and the paper. We want them to embrace it and say, I'm going to try this. So I hope that this helps guide you as you move forward. I hope you're excited about your literary essay unit. If you want a deeper dive, there'll be an open session. You can watch closer to when you start that. So please be looking for that to drop into the Google Classroom, and have a wonderful break.